Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 325, The Spiritual Disease of Doubt, Part 5, The Downfall of Those Who Rely on Themselves. The podcast objectives are provide a definition for self-reliance, analyze the primary reason why many turn to self-reliance, and analyze the relationship between self-reliance and fear. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. If we rely solely on ourselves. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 47 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we analyzed the great threat that fear poses in our quest for holiness, specifically how it works against our trust in the Most High. Along these lines, we came to see how distrust, i.e., the focal degree of doubt, is aligned with withdrawal, i.e., the focal phase and the progression of doubt. From now, we must analyze the third and final degree of doubt. Enter self-reliance. By definition, self-reliance is a reliance on oneself or one's own powers, resources, etc. Like distrust, it is not natural for someone who has been called to run the race of holiness to start the race and immediately begin operating with a spirit of self-reliance, for this defeats the purpose for joining the race in the first place. Classically, we all initiate our quest for holiness because we have come to a critical conclusion. That is, we are unable to have success in this life or the life to come if we rely solely on ourselves. It's a classic non-starter. The question then is, how do we come to a place of self-reliance when we have already been convinced of our need for the Father and His Spirit to be our guide? There are many answers to this question, and for the sake of time, we will only consider two in this podcast. They have not unlocked the power of faith. Now, the first and perhaps most obvious answer to this question is sure, and I will offer it as an interest point. The primary reason why many will turn to self-reliance is because they have not eliminated despair and or distrust. This is in line with the line upon line approach to perfecting holiness, which we discussed in prior podcasts. We analyzed the line upon line approach to perfecting holiness in End Times 306, the 80 Degrees of Lawlessness, Part 3. In that podcast, we analyzed two pivotal passages, to wit, Isaiah 28, 9 through 10, and 2 Peter 1, 3 through 11. The passage in Isaiah establishes the baseline for our progressive realization of holiness. In effect, it is line upon line and precept upon precept, as you can see by the image to the left. Now, the passage in Peter takes it a step further, providing us with the foundation of the sequence of lines and precepts of holiness. These are faith through love, as you can again see by the image to the left. Along these lines, the only way to ascend the pinnacle of holiness and progress our quest for everlasting life is to master all the degrees of holiness in the predefined order. That is, line upon line and precept upon precept. This is why Peter commands us, saying, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and so on and so forth. It is for the following reason, which I will offer as another interest point. In accordance with 2 Peter 3:10, the man or woman who is operating in all the degrees of holiness shall never fall. My dear friends, this is the essence of perfection, which is why perfection is situated at the top of the pinnacle of holiness. And seeing as our perfection is the single requirement upon everlasting life, Peter is revealing in this way, i.e., the line upon line approach, an entrance into the everlasting reign of our Master and Savior, Yahushua Messiah, shall be richly supplied to you. These things being what they are, the inverse reality must also be true. To wit, if we fail to add virtue to faith, we are also failing to eliminate all the degrees of lawlessness that are counter to virtue, faith, and obedience. And this is the primary reason why many turn to self-reliance, even though they know they cannot be relied on. It is because they have not unlocked the power of faith. Ergo, they will eventually fall quarry to every degree of doubt. It is unavoidable. Under the influence of fear. Now, the sum of these matters speaks to the second reason why many will turn to self-reliance. It is because they are in the progression of doubt. Specifically, they are in the third phase. Enter opposition. No doubt, this is the most dangerous phase of the progression of doubt to be in. For it is not only the final phase of this progression, but it will always end with some form of a spiritual stronghold. Here is why. Those who operate with a spirit of self-reliance are contending with Elohim. For when we rely on ourselves, we are indicting him, suggesting we are better off on our own, after we had just come to the righteous conclusion that we can neither live nor find life without him. This is just another testament to the irrational behavior that comes with fear. For who among us in their right mind would contend with Elohim? What sane man or woman is there who lives their life to be his opponent? Not only should you consider this question, but you should also consider the lack of consideration and thought in this development. For as I said before, this is the most dangerous facet of the entire progression of doubt. Consider this and be advised. Once we reach this juncture in the progression of fear and doubt, we will find ourselves making spiritual life and death decisions without giving them careful thought. Quite the contrary, we will be making some of the most critical decisions of our lives without giving them any real thought at all. For we will be making these decisions while we are under the influence of one of the most violent and irrational emotions known to man, fear. Alas, this is how many who were formerly and strongly adverse to self reliance will fall quarry to this dangerous snare. And as self reliance is the critical degree of doubt, those who maintain this spiritual deficit will be firmly entrenched within the spiritual plague of doubt. And they will have no prospects of making any progress in their quest for holiness, perfection, and everlasting life. Now, here is the final word. You'll never succeed, but you can try if you are given to self-rely. Of all the degrees of doubt, self-reliance is clearly the most problematic. For look, listen, it has been written, the steps of a good man are ordered by Yahuwah, and he delights in his way. And although the way is often dark, our reliance upon him strengthens our faith, and we believe we will see a brighter day. This is not the case for those who have made self-reliance a must, who with each passing action are proclaiming, in ourselves we put our trust. And these will fall with foolish pride for thinking their way is best. For not only did they walk contrary to the will of the Most High, but they failed to pass the simplest test. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on all the lessons you have heard this week and ask the Father to give you clarity on anything you are struggling to receive. And if you are led, please feel free to reach out to me. You can fill out a form on our website and let us know what questions you have. And remember, the only question that can truly hurt you is the one you fail to ask. Last but not least, enjoy the upcoming Shabbat and the weekend, and be ready to get back at it next week as we continue to make our calling and election sure in pursuit of the precious and priceless seal of Elohim. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 325, The Spiritual Disease of Doubt, Part 5. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 326, An Overview of the Mind. I will post this podcast on Monday, August 19th, 2024. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.